friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. In each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. As a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect with and learn from each other. The opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we're back once again, and I am so excited I get to talk to Miss Jean today, and I have been looking forward to this conversation for a while. Thank you so much for being here. Why don't you take a second, introduce yourself, tell us where you're at.
Okay, I am Jean Darnell. I'm also known as Awaken Librarian. So for those of you that listen to us via social media, please feel free to get onto my website, awakenlibrarian.com, or catch me on Twitter or X, I should say, my apologies, X at Awaken Librarian altogether as one word. But I am a Texas librarian, and I am down here trying to save our school libraries. I am raising as much cane as I can. If you follow me, you know that I speak my mind, truth to power. And so I try to practice what I preach and be the good trouble in the world and wake up people to what's going on as far as our liberties and what we are guaranteed about by our rights. I paid attention in history class. I went to undergrad at Baylor University, and my studies were in English and history because I was taking so many classes of each. I was like, dude, I might as well just double major and kill two birds with one stone. So, yes, I've been a school librarian for coming upon 11 years.
Nice.
And I've been in public education for almost 23 years.
Wow.
So I got a little sweat equity put into this, and I love what I do. I'm very passionate about student agency and voice and advocacy and looking out for my community. So that's what I do. That's my website started off as a school assignment, and I loved it so much. And being able to have my own platform and kind of my digital baby, that I was like, yeah, this is going to continue. I found a little niche for myself. I'm like, yeah, this is how I can get my work and my content out there and connect directly to, my community. So
I
it
love
took
it.
off, and I haven't stopped.
No, you never stop. You are the greatest. I love it. You are such a wonderful force in school librarianship, and I am so glad that we're getting to have this conversation. I'm curious, though. So you were a double major English and history, and then you were teaching for a while before you got into the library. What was sort of your path to the librarianship?
So I have to give a shout out to my high school. I was a high school English teacher, the dreaded senior English teacher.
Oh,
And my campus librarian, his name was Dr. Roger Leslie, and he was kind of like my savior. He was my confidant whenever I had, issues in class or just needed sound, educator advice, mentor advice. Dr. Leslie was my go-to. And so every time he would, say, you should think about, going back and getting the master's in school librarianship. I think you'd be great at it. And I'm like, I don't have the money for that. I'm a single mom trying to raise two knucklehead kids. I just didn't have the time and the finances. And so he kept pestering me. And one day he asked me again, he's like, and before you say you don't have the money, I put your name in for a cohort and they will pay for it. All you got to do is pay for your books. I
wow.
was like, you playing. And he was like, no, seriously. He's like, so if you really want to do it, I believe that much in you. And then within 2 weeks, I taken my GRE. This was November. By January, I was enrolled.
Wow.
And I was just like, and it was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I had no business being a single mom trying to raise two kids and go back to graduate school at night while
I
working a
can't
full-time
imagine.
job.
Wow.
But that's me in a nutshell. I've always been ambitious. I just couldn't do a little bit. I always had to go that extra unctuous. So sometimes it's a double-edged sword because I don't know how to rest.
Mm-hmm.
People have to remind me, hey, you might want to chill because I'm tired of looking at, like, my sons will tell me, I'm tired of you being on podcasts. I'm tired of dinner having to be rushed. In the last 2 years alone, they just look at me. And when I get a certain look and stare in the face, like, really? This is what you gonna do tonight? And so I am slowly but surely. I've promised. I took on a lot this last year, so I promised my boys I would take an easier 24, 25 school year, and they're looking for expectation guidelines, kind of checkpoints to make sure, oh, are you just giving me lip service? Are you really doing this? And so I promised them next year I'm not going to take on so much.
That's so
But in the
great.
long
I mean,
story, that's how I.
we're yeah, no, that's awesome. We're going to miss you that you're not going to be as omnipresent, but I also think it's very important. I mean, clearly you need to be there for your boys.
Yeah, I'm there. One is 21 and one is 15, so I already have one kind of out, but I don't want to miss out on important with my youngest, so I'm trying to listen as far as parent and not just dictate, but listen to the feedback, and self-reflection. I think that's a sign of maturity when parents can do that with their kids and not, take it to heart
Oh,
so much,
absolutely.
and just, because that's a human being too. They have feelings and thoughts just like anyone else. And so, when he's like, Mama, you're doing too much. And I'm like, okay, okay, I might understand that, because he accidentally looked at my calendar once. He's like, this is all you're doing? And I'm like, well, yeah, I live by my calendar. So, but yeah, I love school librarianship. I'm passionate about it. And if I can't be teaching it in the library, I want to be talking about it. If I can't be talking about it, I want to be helping somebody get to some insight about it, because I've said it before, my culture, my heritage, literacy has been such a prohibitive area that I'm like, no, I'm going to drink as much as this literacy juice. I'm going to get as absorbed as I can in it, because when you look at our times right now, you never know when it's going to be snatched.
Hmm.
And so I look at the book censorship that's going on, and I look at the voices that are censored. That's why I went up to our. I can't believe I did this, but I did do it. I walked up to our Texas Library Association president, and I said, "Where do you need help?" And she's like, "Well, I don't have anyone to lead the Intellectual Freedom Committee." I said, "Well, I want to caution you to who I am before you before you ask me if I want to volunteer." And I told her, I was like, "I'm Awaken Librarian on social media." And she's like, "Oh, I know who you are." And I was like, "So are you sure you want to offer this to me?" you know? And she was just like, if you want to lead, I'm looking for a leader. And so that's how I got into that position. And it was just truth to power. I saw what's happening with the bands, and like I said, whose voices were being erased. I wasn't going to stand by. There's no way I can live and exist in this time period with what's going on as the person I am and not speak up.
You are here not only to help us understand how important advocating is, which you absolutely do on such an amazing level all over the place, but you're also here to share this great lesson. And I think it's so timely that you're bringing us a lesson about AI because, I mean, is there a bigger
Yes.
buzz in school librarianship or schools or education right now? I don't think there is.
There isn't. And education technology was right in my wheelhouse for school librarianship. I immediately took to technology. Ain't that a tongue twister? But yeah, so, and it all started back in 2001 when I taught myself how to code, because I knew computers were going to be the next, wave. When we were coming out of the late 90s and we were worried about what computers were going to do, we had all these
Mhm.
prophecies and stuff. And I was like, well, I need to start learning the language. If computers are that, indicative of our future, I needed to get some ground and understanding on it. And so, same thing when AI came out, I was like, no, I got to get ahead of this. For the education teaching practices, I thought generative AI was definitely a big buzzword, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to get knee deep in it. So, my downtime, I did what I do best, is I start digging. I'm like, how is this going to affect libraries? How is this going to affect, teaching, curriculum, grading? A lot of the concerns that everyone else had, I was digging, looking for the data. I immediately went into library research mode. I was like, what is the data
Nice.
saying? Yeah. And then I had to apply it to me, on a social economical standpoint as well. How is AI going to affect people that look like me? Because I just got to be honest, I got to look at it from the most open and inclusive perspective as possible, because
Hmm.
hey, there's good, bad, and ugly in just about everything. So it behooved me to pay attention to the details, and so I wanted to dig deep, get in there. The only way I feel like you can really learn is to get knee deep in the mud with someone, and that's with
Hmm.
any experience ever. So even when I'm teaching the kids, but the kids are teaching me, and we're knee deep in this mud together. And we might
Hmm.
have to wade and feed off of each other and, spit ideas at each other just to get to the destination. But that's the whole learning process, So in both of us working together, educator and student, we facilitate the knowledge and we get the steps needed in order to get to the goal. That's how I've always taught. Whenever it was a lesson, I'm going to demonstrate it for you. And please correct me if I screw up, because
Yeah.
these kids are sharper than we are. And so when I looked at right now, our kids being born in 2008, these are our 16, 17, 18-year olds, 2005, 6, 7 years. And so they've had swipe technology at their fingertips. They're not like, me, and used to play Oregon Trail on the computer, did not have the we had the prehistoric kind of dinosaur age of computer technology, and so they've had the sophistication. So I want to listen to what they have to say. I want to
Hmm.
see what their fears are. I want to hear what their feedback is from AI, because I feel like some school districts and leadership are not listening to them. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's cutting your nose off to spite your face, because if you're really about data and student agency, you would be listening to them. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to AI, I want to get as much content as I can out there in front of them. I want them to look at it. I want them to investigate it, play with it, do all the curiosities that we don't allow kids to do so much anymore, because we're into the structured,
Yeah.
standardized way of the days to get the data that way. But I think creative data supersedes any type of orchestrated, standardized data. Now, just that's just
Absolutely.
me talking,
Oh,
but
I
you
agree.
know, I fully believe that. So I want AI in front of the kid's face, and so that's what got me to writing this unit. You know, I was accepted into a teacher fellowship with the Pulitzer Center, and that's where you do investigative journalism. Because in addition to being a school librarian, I do investigative journalism on the side, and I'm constantly writing articles and sharing my thoughts and
That's
doing
amazing.
research, because that's the geeky side of librarianship, that I get to research the world as it's happening right now. And so that's how I bring, my full self into the role. And so with AI, I was doing a lot of in learning about AI, especially generative AI. I wanted to make sure that I did the investigative part to really understand what I'm talking about, not
Hmm.
just regurgitating the factoids that an app wants to teach you
Right.
about it. I needed to understand what training data was, what large language modules are, what even just the other day I learned brain computing, identities for, BCIs, or for literally attaching AI algorithms via, different neural paths that they could put on top of your head,
Hmm.
attached to your brain, to read your neural waves in order to, people that are quadriplegics, people that have had amputations, to get their prosthetics to work like we do in thinking right now when you want to move your arm or wave your hand, and they're
Hmm.
reading the neurons in your brains. And so I saw that, and I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
But I also know that sometimes the fascinating glitter of technology, newness of technology, is amazing what it can do. But I also have to look at everything between an equity and inclusive lens. So these are just the things that I'm, thinking about when I look at the marvel of what AI can be and how it can help. But I also want to hear what the kids are, because sometimes kids can give you perspective you've never even thought of.
Hmm.
That it just be like, holy moly, I can't believe you just came up with that.
And I think in education, so many times there's this belief that, like, as the educator, we're the one that's supposed to have all the answers. And if we're not passing the information on, then what are we doing? And it's like, well, no, like we should be co learning. Like, I absolutely love how you kind of brought up that idea of we're learning from each other because they've got knowledge and skills and insights that we're not going to have. And we can't just assume that we know everything there is to know. I mean, you have done an amazing deep dive in this clearly, but like there's going to be something that a kid has tried or done that it just didn't occur to you. And so having that conversation and that collaboration and learning,
Right.
so valuable, so important.
I think that's what we're missing sometimes when we get so bogged down on the data. We forget to interact and influence and, you know, as best as we can, manipulate the data into a creative aspect, if I
Mm-hmm.
can, put it like that. And so, in saying that, I had to devise a unit. Going back to what I was saying with the Pulitzer Center Teaching Fellowship, I had to design a unit of investigative journalism that specifically how it affect marginalized communities and whose voice was missing. So when I was looking at all the rollout from AI, me just being, Awaken Librarian, I was like, how's this affecting Black people? I had to figure out real quick. I was like, hold on a second. When I looked at, what was going on in the news and the book bans and how they were banning books about us for us, aimed to, influenced those that cared and took a participatory interest in the Black community. And I
Mm-hmm.
saw that ban in there. I was like, okay, are we being banned in AI? So that's where I first went into generative AI. I was like, okay, so what is generative AI saying about the Black community? That's the first thing I wanted to know. And so I asked it to write a Black history paper. I just wanted to see where it was at and what it was working with. That's all. It was just an investigative part because that's what I do in my free time. And I did not like what ChatGPT OpenAI said. And so, me being me, I was like, okay, this is what you think about the community. Considering that I have a vested interest, I'm going to teach you what it is that you should be looking at because I knew that there was trainer data that was going in, and the people that were monitoring AI in that training data room were not looking like me. Because if they were looking at like me, that paper wouldn't have been produced
Mm.
out of, if the input was as di- as diverse and inclusive as it needed to be, then the output should have reflected that. And
Right.
considering that the output for Chat GPT, that what I use in this particular situation, did not, have the success that I wanted to, that I felt it needed to give a brief overview of our contributions to this country, I was livid. And so I was like, okay, this is a blog post. And generative AI is popular right now. Okay, let me tell you what I think. And I sat down, and then PBS was just like, we saw your piece. We want to publish this. And I was like, really? Did y'all see all? And they were like, no, no, no. We saw it just as it is, and we want to give your voice a platform. So then I was like, okay. And I felt like, well, I did a dark side. I gave Lord Vader's understanding of the AI galaxy. So then I was like, well, let me put myself into a boot camp, and I signed up for an AI boot camp. And I was like, let me learn as much as possible because whenever I encounter information, I know there's a good side to it. I know there's a valuable side. And so I wanted to give myself as much level playing field as I could as it
Mhm.
related to AI. So I was like, teach me as much as I'm one of these geeky people that will sit there in their free time and do the coursework in order to get the certificate so I can understand AI. And that's what I did. And so then I got a better understanding. I was able to like, oh, how can you teach this? How can you engage kids with this? How can this be fun? How can I use this for literacy? So that's when I came up with 7 innovative, ways to use literacy prompts using ChatGPT. And I had a lot of fun with it. I mean, I was doing everything from,
Oh, I bet.
writing sassy AI generated out of office replies using Beyonce songs. I had Edgar Allan Poe writing an essay to advocate for kids to read scary books. I had, AI generate a campaign for running for mayor for someone that is, 18 years old and never ran for mayor before. So I was having fun with it, doing different ideas because I wanted teachers to be able to have that same kind of fun. And then
Yeah.
other companies started rolling out their programs, and I've used AI in Canva, I've used AI Magic School AI, and so I'm having fun with it. But the investigative side, going back to what I was saying, I wanted to hear what the kids had to say
Mhm.
because that was the most important. So I put together a unit where I was going to teach the kids the how social media and AI are in a marriage, so to speak,
Mhm.
and then how the algorithms that AI has can be manipulated and can
Mhm.
spit out bad things and can, be biased against certain genders and certain communities. And
Mhm.
so I had to give that equitable kind of focal point on AI, and then how some schools were using the biometric data, and using AI algorithms to monitor students. And
Hmm.
so I've been teaching that lesson to some high schoolers as part of the investigative journalism. I was teaching some high schoolers in Chicago last week. And so I
Hmm.
presented this lesson in the articles, and they looked at the data and they were just like, so many points. They just wait, whoa, hand pop up real like rapid fire. Whoa, miss. So you're saying that AI is reading our, posts on social media. And I say, yeah, there's an algorithm out there to do it. I said, you
Mhm.
have Navigate 360 Detect, you have Social Sentinel, you have Securely, you have Grapple, or I think it's Gaffle, whatever it is. But
Hmm.
different things that you literally have relationships with all of your social media content producers, whether it's Instagram, whether it's, YouTube, or, Facebook, all of the different big three. They had relationships and they were reviewing those posts. And then based upon those posts, they would send out safety security alerts. And
Hmm.
so I shared a story of one guy that attended Arizona State University. He was a football player, and he, coaching staff changed, and he was, affected by it. He was upset about it, and he tweeted some things, and AI algorithm picked it up, and before he knew it, SWAT team was at his dorm room, and a barrel gun was at the back of his head, and he was being charged with felonies for,
Whoa.
knowingly interrupting a school place. And so, and he never knew, and the students at that school never knew that they were being monitored by an
Huh.
AI big brother named Social Sentinel. And so, and that's what flagged. And so when I saw that article, I was immediately upset because, of course, this kid comes from a community. This could be my brother. And so my brother was a big football player.
Hmm.
And I saw that and I was like, but what about your First Amendment right? But what about your Fourth Amendment right to, so I'm looking at it from a legal standpoint because both of my parents are attorneys. They met in law school, and so everything
Hmm.
I've ever encountered, I used to read law books for fun. That's another reason why I'm very because I used to try to help my mom in her office as a paralegal when she was starting up her practice. So,
Hmm.
I knew how to read law books and what to look for because my mother taught me at a young age. And so when I was looking at the terms of service and agreements for these AI companies and how there really wasn't legal guidelines for them that should be transparent as far as what's being done with that information and how notification would be given to the public if they're in a place that's monitored by drones. Because and one of our investigative articles, a girl was followed home by a drone and she didn't know what it was, scared her.
Hmm.
It turned out to be the school safety police drone, was just trying to make sure she got home okay safely because she was walking late at night. But at no point did they notify the students that they were going to be monitored by social media by unmanned flying drones that could identify who they are, follow them all
Jeez.
around campus. They had no notification of that. And so when I presented that to graduating seniors, the last week I taught high school seniors, I was like, this is the capability of AI. And so I'm like, these are the colleges that said they would use it or would not use it. It changed how they were thinking. You could see
Hmm.
it right there in their face before their eyes. They were like, wait, whoa. So they made me go back and slow down because I was clicking through the slides too fast on the names of colleges that said they would use this, AI Big Brother monitoring, or they would not. And the kids were like, oh no, I was considering that school, but even if they send me, an acceptance letter, I ain't going. And I was just
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
unrecruit you, but at the same time, I want you to be aware because these companies are playing on the fact that you have young 18, 19-year-olds that are unaware of their rights.
Yeah.
And so they're participating and they're knowingly giving consent, whether it's on their phone for their face biometrics. And
Mm-hmm.
Apple's getting that data, and we hope Apple is going to do right with that data, but we don't know who they're selling that data to. And so one
Mm-hmm.
of the kids that I was teaching last week, so he's like, hold up, with the facial recognition software, you're telling me that if the police have a relationship with this company that monitors and identifies everyone's face, and if the computer, say, like, if somebody hates me and they hacked into the police computer and they put my face and say I was at this location, even though I know I was sitting on my couch playing video games, I was like, well, technically, in that the way you're situating the scenario, if that is the case, yes, you would may have to defend where you were against the computer. So who's going to charge a computer if they make a
Mm-hmm.
mistake, if it
Mm-hmm.
messes up? And
Yeah.
so where's the accountability and the transparency on that? And
Yeah.
so the kids were just like, I've never seen kids back away from a technology before, but listening to the rules that they came up with after, this deep dive and investigation into social media and AI and the biases that are associated with it. When they saw it, it was just a completely different tune.
Oh, I
And the
bet.
whole reason why I was taking them through that process is because a lot of schools right now don't have a AI policy. They don't have an AI users policy. Here in the
Mm-hmm.
state of Texas, they have, shushed our students. They've blocked a lot of the, AI websites and tools and stuff to use for fun, because I guess they're still trying to get their wits and understanding about AI.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, I don't think they're hearing what the kids are concerned with, because the kids are having legitimate, mature concerns. And I
Yeah.
feel like, any school district that really wants to show you care about the kids, give them a seat at the table. If
Yes.
if you want kids to abide by policies, give them input into those policies. It would
Yeah.
mean a lot more if like the kids that I had last week, they had to create 4 policies. And so, in order for them to do that, we had to do the deep dive into the framework. But the policies they came up with were so very rich.
Mm.
They were just like, hey, we're not going to create, I don't want you doing anything with my likeness or image that's going to violate my Fourth Amendment right. I don't want you to do anything with my image that can be manipulated or sold to a company that can manipulate it. They were thinking so far along on the capabilities of it and the mutations of AI. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this is what the school district needs to hear.
Yeah.
So that's why that lesson was so important to me. I had them paraphrase an AI policy. We were looking at what the EU, Europe just released their AI act that's supposed to govern the whole planet,
Hmm.
ideally. Now, which companies abide by it, we don't know.
Yeah.
It was just written back in, I think it was October or November of 2023. So there's a grace period in between the adoption of these new guidelines and policies and what everybody has to abide by. But I
Mm-hmm.
want to see how the AI, how the machine is trained. I want to look at that training data. I want to know who's in
Yeah.
that room to make decisions as far as what this input is, because I've looked at the data, and right now AI is embracing our flaws as though our flaws don't need to be fixed. And
Mm-hmm.
as a society, we know we haven't fixed all of the problems that's gone wrong in just existing and cohabitating with each other. And now we're trying to
Yeah.
transfer this semi enlightened intelligence to a machine that might be,
Mm-hmm.
let's level. A computer will and has been proven to be smarter than the average human. So if you
Hmm.
have this computer that's constantly thinking, that's constantly gathering information, to develop a simulation of thought like a human, like a human, eventually it might look at the input data that we're giving it, see that trash for what it is, and decide, ah, I don't know if I'm going to, follow that data, that algorithm, because I know it produced bad results, because I've looked at and analyzed all the other instances and algorithms that had this specific code in it, and I
Mm-hmm.
know it leads to XYZ.
Yeah.
So
which depends on the system itself being able to recognize that the results that we have been getting are not good results. And
Right.
I mean, it's being trained on the data that created the world that we're in now. And
Right.
that's, you're trying to look at the outside of the box from inside the box. It's not always, it
Right.
may not be feasible. So, yeah.
And our kids need to know
Boy.
how to interact with that information, how to
Yeah.
assess it. So this is where the literacy and the intellect of your librarians come in. And so where I look at when I look at school districts that are removing their librarians, and
Oh,
the areas
yeah.
that it's happening in, they're putting those communities at a disadvantage because you don't have the intellectual human being that's going to create that buffer, that is going to monitor that data, or that is going to teach kids how to assess and analyze the data. You're taking
Mm-hmm.
out the central core processor of your, school campus. How you
Mm-hmm.
think it's gonna work?
Yeah.
We always talking about the library is the heart of the campus. Well, you just got heart failure. Now what are you going to do? Where's the
Yeah.
stent? Where's the medication? How are we going to open up this vessel again? Because we got to get this working. Because
Oh,
if
yeah.
not, we're running out of time because this computer is going to figure it out. And it might figure out that we're the pest, we're the virus. And then what happens when,
Get into our
it's
Terminator
amazing. And
situation.
so I want the kids to look at it from that perspective of, okay, in the sense of viral as it relates to AI, how bad can it get? How
Wow.
preventative do we need to be?
Yeah.
And so giving
Yeah.
the kids access now while it's hot, while we're still in the formation stage, while we're still in the input, while we're still trying to work out the kinks, I think it's imperative. That's the reason why I wrote this lesson. I want the kids to hear it. I want the kids to interact with it, to think about it, to get angry, to find
Mm-hmm.
poke the holes into, whatever theories or whatever public announcements are being told to us, and then looking at the
Mm-hmm.
data and
Yeah.
seeing what's being spit
Absolutely.
out, seeing who's being banned for, whether it's shadow banned or whether it's book banned or whether it's a gender ban, because AI has been proven to be sexist as well too. Because one part of the deep dive into the lesson was looking at the algorithmic biases against women that
Hmm.
AI is perpetuating. And so the monitor of our the policing and monitor of the pictures that we put on the internet, and how women are scored on this racy, sexy, explicit scale, that they rate
Hmm.
pictures on how sexually explicit it is. And
Hmm.
sexually explicit could be a girl in a bikini,
Hmm.
but because she's in a bikini, she's rated as, higher in the explicit, where a topless man or a man in what are the skinny little briefs that they would be in a
Like the little
swimsuit with
Speedo.
speedos.
Yeah.
Yeah, a man in a speedo, ha, no problem.
Hmm.
He might score 20 on this racy explicit, but a girl in a two-piece bikini, and she's already at 86. Well, what is the data
Hmm.
telling you? What is it telling
Yeah.
young girls about how their body is going to be related or degraded down in whatever way? So
Yeah.
just looking at that data, and then same input of these images that are created with AI. what
Oh, yeah.
what is the data that is being trained on to create these images, and how are these images abiding by copyright law, and how is it stepping
Or
all over
not.
copyright? Because as
Yeah.
librarians, we got to know that when a
Yeah.
kid comes to print out
Absolutely.
a picture and they want to put it in their project, I don't want it to be so much like some kind of, Disney princess that the sleeping Disney spies pop in like, hey, that's a violation of copyright, and they try to carry off a little kid. That's a princess story we don't want to happen. But no, but seriously, these are the things that we have to think about as, librarians, as educators, as teaching our kids to discern between something that's real and something that is AI generated. It's what we're threatened with right now as a country, as we get ready to go through another set of elections. You have AI bots out
Mm.
there taking people's voices and making it say and do all kinds of crazy things. And so you may
Mm-hmm.
not know that the person you're speaking to on the phone is actually some dude in his basement in Montana pretending to be a political figure. You don't know it
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
sounds so much like it, and the technology of AI is so sophisticated that it can do that. So it's easy to dissuade. Look at the people who are
Yeah.
benefited from that. Who
Mm-hmm.
benefits for something like that going on, and how are we going to be able to discern differently? So yeah,
Yeah.
I've been.
You have done a heck of a deep dive. This is amazing. You are such a font of knowledge on AI, and it's awesome. It's amazing. You're bringing up all these great points that we really need to consider. I mean, we personally need to consider, but also as a profession, school librarians and educators need to consider. The lesson that you had shared out using AI for literacy. Where did that sort of? If I'm a student and I'm coming in and you're going to be doing this lesson, what might I see as I come in and you're ready to do your using AI for literacy lesson?
Yes, give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull that
Yeah.
lesson up. I wrote it almost a year ago. Bear with me for a minute.
Oh yeah. No, no problem.
You're talking about the one I did with Matt Miller, correct?
Maybe let's see. April 28th, 2023. Using
Yeah,
AI for
that's it.
literacy. Okay.
So, Matt Miller, he's a phenomenal man in tech. He he's like a tech guru god. And so when I did that article for when PBS picked up my article on ChatGPT as it relates to Black history, this was a part of me doing an investigation of the fun side of it. So my kids, I did not roll this lesson out with my middle school students. I had to teach this in a workshop over the summer to some high school students. And so
Okay.
what this looked like, first, I love interacting with technology. So you're going to see my kids at the computers. We're going to be, logging in, investigating, playing with ChatGPT. So at that time, ChatGPT had just rolled out. Anyone with a Gmail account could have signed up for it and start tinkering around playing with it. And so that's exactly what we did. And so I wanted to see how creative they could get and the different types of ways that we could use the prompt writing to get the result that we want. So when I was talking earlier, you know, um, I had an example that we had kids writing poems from the dead, you know. So the example that I
Hmm.
used was Edgar Allan Poe. And one kid did Stephen King. He had ChatGPT write about something with Stephen King as though they were Stephen King. So I wanted to see the
Hmm.
kids play and interact with it. And so you'll see the kids typing. You'll see them playing. You'll see them interacting. My kids love to do weird things with AI. So one of them, had the AI voiceover, and so they had Joker singing certain, other tunes, and so they, they had the curiosity and the fun. So when you're gonna see us doing things like that, I believe in showing the kids engaging with the material, produce it. So how can you make it better now that you know this, or how can you improve upon it, or what did you find out that was wrong in the information? Because hey,
Yeah.
ChatGPT OpenAI only had data up into 2022, and
Hmm.
that data was collected from a lot of sources, any source, anybody that had a
Yeah.
page on there. So I also had to teach them how to, not take everything that you find on AI at face value. Read it, because even if you read the terms of service, they will tell you, hey, this is a toy, this is fictional, and this is fun, but we're not responsible for, they give their
Yeah.
disclaimers. They they
There's
they they put the legal aspect
there's
out there.
there's so
So
many. Yeah,
go ahead.
and I love that you're bringing in. There's so many skills that the students maybe don't realize, and I think educators probably don't realize are important to teach the kids as we're thinking about AI. Like you were talking about writing prompts. Like if you can't generate the prompt that's going to get you the result you want, so prompt writing becomes a skill in and of itself. And like assessing, like if you tell it to write a poem as Edgar Allan Poe, you need to know what Edgar Allan Poe sounds like in order to
Right.
know if it's done what you want it to do. And, as you said, the terms of service, don't trust any of it because unless you can do the research yourself and actually find where it said the thing that it's supposedly giving you as facts, there's so many
Right.
great information literacy skills built into thinking about how these AI tools, how they might work, how we might use them. But when we do use them, what are we paying attention to?
Right. And then whose voice is missing from the contribution of the data that you're getting back?
Yes.
That the analyzation of it and the application of it. So those are two things, because when I was teaching this the first time around, when it became to Chat GPT, the students did not like the fact that the data source was limited, it was cut off. They did not like the fact that, when I asked them, well, where did ChatGPT get this information from? Did you ask it to cite itself? Well, oh no, I didn't do
Mm,
that. Well, why doesn't it come in with this? The kids, they want to know the easiest way. Well, why didn't it cite
right.
it to begin with? Why can't it tell me where it got his information from? Well, you didn't. Did you
Yeah.
ask him to cite his sources? If you didn't ask him to cite his source, then it doesn't have to do it. That's kind of like what y'all do. You don't cite your sources when you write your papers sometimes. So how do I know where you got this from? But you want me to believe that you wrote this sentence, and so
I love the
that
idea of the
aspect.
students having to deal with that side of things that we always have to deal with, and they just it goes right over their head. But now, and they've got to deal with it.
And so, it's so funny. I was telling my kids, this is a complete sidebar, but they got upset with me, the kids last week in Chicago, because I was teaching them that I taught the teachers how to discern whether their papers were written by AI or not. And they were like, so one of the
Mm.
kids, he was so funny. He was just like, he sat real patiently with his hand up in the air, like, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. So you telling me you taught the teachers this? Why would you do that? Why would you sell us out like that? I'm like, he was really upset. Like he's like, so I was like, so it's okay that you know this information, but the teachers are not supposed to know. And it was like, well, yeah, I thought you was trying to give us a one up, and I'm like, no, sir, hustler to hustler,
Uh,
this hustle is not going to work for you. And so, he was just
uh,
like, I was showing them how originality AI and a lot of the different things that you can do that will determine and grade how much of a project is written by AI. But here's the thing, that could be
mm.
wrong, because I wrote
Oh
a
yeah.
lesson in collaboration with AI, and I felt like, it was more like a 60-40, 70-30 maybe split on the writing. But when I put it into the AI content, distinguisher, for lack of better words, it said that, 90% of it was written by AI. And I was like, you
Hmm.
lying, because you didn't even have your citations. You didn't cite your sources. I had to go get this video, I had to find this article, because when I asked you to find an article, you gave me an error message. So,
Hmm.
don't sit here and tell me you wrote it when I know. So I was showing it, and the kids were just like, well, great, now you rat us out like that. I was like, well, look, in addition to that, your professors can go into your document version history and look at it, and they can see where a big input of information happens. So either A, own up to the fact that you use AI with this project, show where you used AI, cite it, show how you made it better, or how you took that idea and further developed it. Then you
Hmm.
will get credit for the AI, and you will get credit for being honest. The problem is you
Right.
guys want to pass it off as though you did it, and that's where you lying. That's where you're getting. So
Hmm.
just own up to it, properly cite it. I access AI this day. This is the prompt that I gave it to get this information. This is how I made the information better. Just cite it, and you will never ever have a problem with AI. We just want to know where it is and what words are yours and what word isn't yours. So,
Hmm.
I just have, it's the same thing that we had to teach kids when,
When
technology first came out. What is a
yeah.
reputable source? How do you know this is a reputable source? How you cite this whether it's ALA, Chicago, or MLA format, whichever it is. Heck, AI is
Hmm.
so sophisticated right now. All you got to do is tell it to do that, and it will get the source in that format in
Yeah.
less than 5 seconds. Which, hey, that's an improvement,
Hmm.
because I grew up. When I was in college. You used to have to still go to the MLA format handbook, find a way it was
Hmm. I
properly
got a
typed in
copy.
there, and
Yep.
then model your stuff behind it. Stuff like, y'all kids don't even know how spoiled you are. You little entitled little suckers.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally, totally. Man, I love it. So I came to talk about your using AI for literacy lesson, and have gotten so many more lessons within the discussion of just thinking about how this is going to, what we should be thinking about, and how this is going to impact our students, ourselves, our profession. Boy, so many. There's just, it's like an onion of great ideas that just every layer that you share reveals another layer that we need to be thinking about. It's so great. I love it.
Well,
Man.
that's why I think it's so important that I don't keep it in my brain. This is the reason why, this podcast is important to me, because it's great. Yay, Gene, you benefit from it. But unless you sharing it with someone else, it does no good just being stored up in my head. I have to share and show other educators how it can be manipulated for good, for bad, for whatever reason. So
Yeah.
yeah, I want to do things like this. I literally just taught a college on Friday, what I'm looking at as far as the work that I did for the Pulitzer Prize, but also how you can use it as an educator to entice your kids. Don't be afraid of AI. Get your, verbiage right so the kids understand how they can use it, because I have to teach for future. I not just
Mm-hmm.
now. Our kids they will need to understand how to engage with AI. The
Yeah.
faculty will need to understand how to engage with AI. We didn't think when the computers rolled out that they were going to be as involved in our lives. We didn't know we were going to be carrying it around. You can't be,
Yeah.
10 minutes from your technology. It has to be in the same room with you. We did not
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I feel like we're on the cusp or at the tip of a very large iceberg as it relates to AI. The longer you
Mm-hmm.
use it, the more involved and engaged with it. You don't have to worry about AI taking your job. You
Mm-hmm.
will have to worry about it if you stick your head in the sand. You're like, no, I'm not going to learn one more bit of technology. I'm not going to move with it. Yeah. Now, you do have, job insecurities because you're flat out refusing to engage with something that is transforming the way we communicate. You
Mm-hmm.
know, AI it's powerful, but everybody needs to do their part in inputting how it's going to be used, how it's going to be, clear in the expectations of, privacy violations and privacy protections. So
Mm-hmm.
we got to look at it, all of it. And so school is the first place. That's where you learn your social customs. That's where you learn your academics, your human
Mm-hmm.
behaviors. And so to not embrace AI in a school setting, you're setting yourself up and you're setting your students up for failure. It's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
So I'm trying my best to do what I can to help and to educate students, or, faculty, or, even as an education consultant. I will share everything in my brain if you have the time. I will pour this sucker out for you. And what I don't know and you have a question on, if I don't have the answer to it, you better rest assured. And at 24 to 48 hours, I'm going to find that answer, because it will nag my own brain not knowing and not being able
Yeah.
to help or assist on that, because that's where I feel like librarians, this is what we naturally do. We are,
Mm-hmm.
the helpmates in the school. If you don't know where to go, if you're
Absolutely.
lost, find a library. If you don't know, where to go with a lesson, collaborate with your librarian. If you don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
plan a program, that's what your librarian is. If you want to talk to somebody but you don't know how to set up the, podcast, call your librarian, because they can teach you about Riverside in a minute. So
That's right.
I don't see how, people are not up in arms about what's happening to our libraries and not trying to
Mm-hmm.
use all of it, because we're more than just books. We're books.
Oh
We're
yeah.
technology. We're social workers. We're therapists. we're,
Mm-hmm.
we're
We're the
playmakers.
safe spaces. Yep. Yep.
Safe
We're the
spaces,
maker
movers,
spacers. We're
shakers,
the absolutely. I mean, like you said,
community
heart of the
town hall
school.
meetings.
We are all of
Look,
it, and then.
and even in some libraries, to wedding venues. I did not know a library could be a wedding venue. I was like, when you think about some of the
That's a new one.
classic, you know, libraries, whether that's, the library in Philadelphia or Chicago, there are various different libraries. But yes, I learned that libraries can be wedding venues. And I
Hmm.
never thought about it like that. I was like, a library? So it just amazes me what, all the many facets of the library.
Yeah. Well, this is amazing. so thought provoking, so many things to not just feed our brains, but to really get our professional thought processes and juices go in to think about how we can bring this to our students. I'm so glad that you came to share. We're now going to go in a completely different direction. It's
Okay.
time for our book break. Book break. Sweetie. So, for the book break, you get to share any book you like, anything. Could be personal, professional, for kids, for staff, for students, for yourself, just a beach read, whatever. Anything you like. What's a book you think people should know that they should try and get their hands on?
Okay. I will discuss my book, Legacy. And this
Ooh.
is a black physician, I should say, reckons with racism in medicine. I think it's super important
Hmm.
that we start discussing, especially this last week, where there's a law coming out where they're banning DEI, any type of DEI instruction in the field of medicine. And I feel like we are rolling back in the worst of ways if that is what's happening, because
Yeah.
equity and inclusion in medicine, that goes back to the Hippocratic oath of do no harm.
Yeah.
DEI is affirming that do no harm. So this is by Dr. Uché Blackstock, and she talks about how she is a second generation physician. Her mother was a physician, and her twin sister became physician as well. And it talks about her
Hmm.
experience as a young black doctor in America, and so how a lot of the instructional part is the data as it relates to the black community is so biased, is so jaded, is so
Yeah.
misinformed that you
Yeah.
have doctors believing that they're following proper medical practice, but because that medical practice never consulted black doctors and just took what they internalized, understood, but never practiced and applied about the black community, and they're using that as medical knowledge to train all doctors. And so it's scary, some of the things that she discusses in here and how doctors relate. And so I looked at that, and the reason why I wanted to read it is coming out of the pandemic and seeing how it decimated, communities that look like mine. It was important
Hmm.
for me to understand why. Knowing what I have experienced in my various medical issues and not being listened to and not having a doctor to advocate for you, having to get up and walk out of a doctor's office, you know, almost 8 months
Hmm.
pregnant because at
Hmm.
that point in time I was done with that doctor not listening to me and having the complications after that and knowing the complications that other women who look just like me have faced. That's it gets back to an instruction part. If we have to get back to the diagnosis of the why and why is this happening, some people have to be taught that way. And so she goes into the deep dive of how these biases are killing people and how it's a
Yeah.
complete violation of the one thing that they're supposed to do, which is no harm to a human that's in pain or that needs your help with your with your skill set, and to save that life. And so when I think about the segregation and how you had black hospitals and how you had, white only hospitals, and I think about how when Dr. King said we were integrating, he was trying his best at the end, and he was saying, I'm afraid that we're integrating into a burning house. It makes me
Hmm.
wonder if some of what the medical racism is the burning house, because when a person is under and they're unconscious, anything can be done to them. They can't defend themselves, and there are only
Yeah.
certain people in that room, and you got to know that that person that's in that room, when you are knocked out, unable to defend yourself, will still defend you and will still help you and will
Hmm.
still give you the best of their abilities. And so, in reading her story and seeing how some other, and she went to Harvard Medical School, and seeing how some other doctors treated her, and how some other fellow doctors in training treated her, and listening to her story, understanding what her mother went through and what her and her sister, it's riveting. And
Oh, I
I
bet.
think about it
I
in a
mean,
goth
horrifying but riveting.
It is, yes, that's what I'm saying, in a ghastly way, because it even extends into how our soldiers were treated after they returned home from various wars, World War I, World War II, World War III, sorry. But the Vietnam War, sorry, in my
Hmm.
community, Vietnam War was a long enough war to where it was like a World War III, because the Vietnam War went on for years upon years, way longer than
Hmm.
World War I and World War II combined. So, in
Hmm.
our the effects of it. So many community members coming back, with diseases from the chemicals that were sprayed during Vietnam, and, the Agent
Hmm.
Orange, and how our community was treated afterwards, in the medical sense of how they were taken, whether they were taken seriously, and then how that mentality, everything from how they were treated with their, disabilities coming back home from war, how they were treated with, as it relates to the Tuskegee experiment, how they were treated
Hmm.
in the apprehension that went along when the COVID-19 vaccine came out, and a lot of the hesitation. This is the stuff
Yeah.
that was knee deep in there. I feel like everyone should read, because it's going to give you a perspective when case in point, I'll tell you a small story. I stopped talking to a sorority sister of mine because she minimized my racial experience in, medicine. And she would
Hmm.
downplay a lot of the concerns that I have. Well, you don't understand how doctors talk, and you don't understand how nurses communicate. I've worked in the hospital, and they're just matter of fact. I was like, no, this doctor was not listening to my concerns. And so
Hmm.
it got to a point to where I had to stop communicating with her, because I felt like and she was mixed race. So she was,
Hmm.
I thought she would understand, but it seemed like she didn't. And I wonder if this what it feels like when some patients go in and they're trying to talk to their doctor and communicate what's going on, and their doctor has willful, guards up in their ability to relate and empathize with their patient. So that's why I feel like everyone, because she has such storylines and so many different stories, that even if you're not a person of color, you can see how, the biases and the marginalization and the teaching and practice has influenced how doctors treat people of color. And
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
I feel like it's a mass equity we need to, read together as a culture, as a society, just in the wanting to improve and help your fellow man. I think
Yeah.
that's why you should read it, to understand your fellow man. Definitely. She has a fascinating story, and I cannot believe these are medical sometimes I have to stop, because I'm like, this is a medical professional acting this way. Like, how
Yeah.
are you letting your personal hatred and not feel this as a sentient intellectual that has gone to school for extra years to understand the human brain and the body and the biology? How can you not still yet understand and interact with these blinders? So it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, how can you ignore the reams and reams of data that have been collected that show what a different experience people get when they go into see their medical professionals based on their look or their how they might be different than their care provider. It's mind blowing. This is absolutely a book that is going on my short list of TBR because this just sounds so fascinating. Wow.
It really
You are
is.
giving me so many things to think about.
You know what? She's doing such a fine job. I wish a lot more media would listen to her, story. CBS Good Morning did a segment with her that I thought went
Hmm.
phenomenally well. So, definitely look at that, because she did. I mean, it's only 6 or 7 minutes, so they can't go that deep into it. But I think it's critical right now, especially when you have legislation that's coming out to say no, we're no
Yeah.
longer going to teach on this, aspect of, doctors are not supposed to solve racism. Are you serious? Doctors are the first one that knows that scientifically racism has affected the body. How are you going to sit up here and tell me that's not a doctor's problem to understand and
Yeah.
instruct and teach on, to be better helpful and preventative for, up and coming doctors
Yeah.
that are about to go through the program. So when I look at our
Mm.
headlines that are saying that, and I look at the structured attack as it relates to now, they're trying to come after, they came after the intellects in the school system, because it might be a, occupational bias, but librarians are typically the smartest people in the room. Okay, I said it, but usually we're pretty doggone sharp. Okay, you're not going to pull one over on us too easily. But now they're going after the intellects in the field of medicine. And I'm sorry,
Mm.
but that's oversight, overreaching, trying to get us into a whole. I'm sorry. You're going to need the education. You're going to need the clearness of mind not to be manipulated in that way, especially when it comes to health. Now we're talking about
Hmm.
longevity and messing with people's livelihoods and being able to survive. And
Yeah.
you better be concerned with it. It's your prerogative as far as it relates to you wanting to keep your medical license as a doctor. You must understand. You must stop this. I feel like,
Yeah.
and I feel like they did not they kind of tangled with it with Dr. Fauci as we were going through the whole pandemic, and how they tried to discredit him, and I thought that was a precursor to what they're trying to do now with doctors and remove, DEI instruction. It's like, oh, well, we were
Yeah.
able to make Fauci resign and want to toss up his hand and walk away from the madness. And now
Hmm.
we're going to make, doctors of color, which when you look at the doctors across the nation, only 5% of them are black doctors. And
Hmm.
when you have a 12 to 13% population of,
Yeah.
black people, and only 5% are doctors, that's scary.
Mm.
It's even scarier
Yeah.
when you get into the political arenas, and when you get into the CEOs of companies. So that marginalization
Mm.
we're used to but tired of. And I feel like
Yeah.
everyone is not, it's not just black people that are tired of. We are all, as Americans, united, sick of the bull. And so
Hmm.
if you want to start playing with the schools and censoring what we read, fine, we'll get it. I'll get the information one way or the other. I ain't going back in time. So that means I got to
Hmm.
be an underground speakeasy library. I'll give you the certain knock in the code, and I'll do what I need to do to get the resources to you. But I hope that's not what we're going to have to
Well,
do for hospitals. I don't want to have to go to an underground
no.
speakeasy hospital because they believe in
No.
DEI versus,
Yeah.
the
Well,
above ground hospitals that won't support DEI. That cannot be
yeah.
what we do as a society. We have to have
No.
learned from the
Well,
history books. Come on now.
yeah, seriously. Well, I'm going to definitely be coming to your speakeasy library, so that goes without saying. Thank you so much. You have given us so many things to think about, so many great resources. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time. I'm so glad we got to do this, and hopefully we can do it again sometime, because you are just such an amazing font of knowledge, and I love talking to you. So
Oh,
thank you so much.
thank you so much, my friend. This has been a blast. And yes, I promise next time I might choose a lighter lesson that won't, I won't have to, I will give you a better sweet understanding of it. How about that? Because I do love
Sound
AI. I just want it used in a equitable manner.
as it should be. Thanks for checking out this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes, which include not only a link to the lesson, but also links to the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have an idea, a question, or a lesson you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's school, L-I-B, learning@gmail.com. Know someone with a great school library lesson? Let us know. Until next time, be safe, be good, and be well.